Before money existed, there was a simple way to get things. It was called barter. If you were a farmer and had extra chickens, you could trade them. Maybe you needed a new pair of shoes. You would find a shoemaker who wanted chickens. You would swap your birds for his shoes. On the surface, this sounds easy. It was a direct trade. You have something I want. I have something you want. We make a deal. This system worked for a very long time, for thousands of years, in early human societies all over the world. It was the first form of commerce, a person-to-person exchange of real, tangible goods and services. But barter had big problems. The biggest problem was something called the double coincidence of wants. And this is a fancy way of saying both people in a trade had to want what the other person had. Imagine you have chickens, but the shoemaker doesn't want chickens. Maybe he wants a clay pot instead. Now you have a new problem. You have to find a potter who wants your chickens. Then you trade your chickens for a pot. Then you take that pot back to the shoemaker. Hopefully, he still needs a pot and hasn't already traded his shoes to someone else for something else. It all got very complicated very fast. Another issue was value. How many chickens is one pair of shoes worth? Is it 2 chickens? 3. What if your chickens are small and the shoes are big? And what about things that can't be easily divided? Let's say one cow is worth 10 pairs of shoes. If you only need 1 pair of shoes, you can't exactly give the shoemaker 1/10 of a living cow. The goods themselves were also a problem. Your chickens could get sick. Your extra grain could rot. Carrying around goods to trade was heavy and inefficient. People needed a better way. They needed something that everyone agreed was valuable. This need led to the first forms of commodity money. People started using certain items as a medium of exchange. These weren't coins yet, but they were a step in that direction. In different parts of the world, people used different things. They used salt, which was valuable for preserving food. The word salary even comes from the Latin word for salt, salarium. In other places they used cowrie shells, beautiful and durable shells from the ocean. They used beads, cattle, or blocks of tea. These items were better than bartering random goods because they were more durable, easier to carry, and more widely accepted. But they still had problems. Shells could be found on any beach, and cattle were still alive. The world was ready for the next big idea. The big idea that changed everything arrived around 600 BC. It happened in a kingdom called Lydia. Lydia was in modern-day Turkey. The Lydians were clever merchants. They were sitting on a natural resource that was perfect for money. The rivers in their kingdom were full of a special metal. It was a mix of gold and silver that occurred naturally. The Lydians called it electrum. It was shiny, rare, and didn't rust. It was the perfect material to solve the problems of barter and commodity money. So, they started turning this metal into small bean-shaped lumps. These lumps were the world's first true coins. What made these Lydian coins so special? It was the guarantee. The king of Lydia, King Alyats, decided to put a stamp on them. He had an official seal, often a lion's head, pressed into each lump of electrum. This stamp was a promise. It was the king's way of saying, I guarantee this piece of metal has a certain weight and purity. Suddenly, people didn't need to carry scales around to weigh their gold and silver for every single transaction. They could just count the coins. The king's stamp did the work for them. It created trust. This was a revolutionary concept. Money was no longer just about the metal itself. It was about the trust in the authority that issued it. This innovation spread like wildfire. Trading became so much easier. A Lydian merchant could sell a shipment of olive oil to a visitor from Egypt. Instead of figuring out what to trade, they could agree on a price in coins. The Egyptian merchant would pay with Lydian staters, the name for these coins. The Lydian merchant could then use those same coins to buy wheat from a local farmer. The farmer could use them to pay his taxes to the king. The coins circulated, making the entire economy faster, more efficient, and more powerful. It fueled a boom in trade throughout the ancient world. The idea was simple but profound. Money became a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value all in one. As a unit of account, it allowed people to put a price on anything, from a loaf of bread to a giant ship. As a medium of exchange, it was the go-between that killed the double coincidence of wants. And as a store of value, you could save your coins for the future, knowing they would still be valuable later. The Lydians didn't just invent a new object, they invented a new system of trust that would form the bedrock of economies for the next 2.5 millennia. The Lydian idea quickly traveled across the Aegean Sea to Greece. The Greek city-states, which were hubs of trade and philosophy, loved the concept of coins. Each major city, or polis, began minting its own. Athens made coins with an owl, the symbol of the goddess Athena. Corinth used Pegasus, the mythical winged horse. These symbols were like brand logos. An Athenian owl coin was recognized all over the Mediterranean. It was known to be pure silver and a reliable weight. This made international trade smoother than ever before. Greek coins were made mostly of silver, with the Athenian tetradrachm becoming the ancient world's equivalent of the US dollar, a stable, trusted currency. Then came the Romans. As the Roman Republic grew into a massive empire, its money grew with it. The Romans were masters of organization, and they applied this skill to their currency. They created a standardized monetary system that was used from Britain to Syria. The most famous Roman coin was the denarius, a small silver coin. A Roman soldier was paid a few hundred denarii a year. The Romans also minted gold coins called the aureus and bronze coins like the sestertius for smaller everyday purchases. Roman coins were not just for buying things, they were also powerful tools for propaganda. Each emperor would put his own face on the coins. It was a way to say, I am in charge. The images on Roman coins told stories. They celebrated military victories, showed pictures of new buildings like the Colosseum, or depicted gods and goddesses that the emperor favored. When a new emperor took power, one of the first things he did was mint new coins with his portrait. These coins spread his image and authority to the farthest corners of the empire. For many people living under Roman rule, the face on a coin was the only way they would ever know what their emperor looked like. The coins were a physical connection to the immense power of Rome, a daily reminder of who was in control. But Roman coins also tell a story of decline. Over the centuries, as the empire faced economic troubles, emperors started debasing the currency. They would mix less silver with more cheap metals like copper but keep the face value of the coin the same. This was an early form of inflation. People realized the coins were less valuable. Vertrouwensbeurs. En das in bland staan, per malper born price door ijsdaans. For goods went up. By the end of the Roman Empire, the once proud silver denarius contained almost no silver at all. The collapse of the currency mirrored the collapse of the empire itself, showing just how important stable money is to a stable society. While Lydia was experimenting with stamped electrum, a completely different story of money was unfolding in China. The Chinese had also moved past simple barter. They used cowrie shells as an early form of currency, but their first metal money looked very different from the round coins of the West. Around the same time as the Lydians, the Chinese started making miniature bronze versions of tools. These were called spade money and knife money. They were shaped exactly like tiny spades and knives. This was a logical step from a barter system where real tools were valuable trade items. These small metal tool-shaped objects were easier to carry and trade than actual tools. Around 221 BC, the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, did something historic. He united the country, and he also united its money. He abolished all the different forms of spade and knife money. He replaced them with a single standard coin. It was a round bronze coin with a square hole in the middle. This design was brilliant. The round shape represented heaven, and the square hole represented the earth. More practically, the hole allowed people to string hundreds of coins together, making them easy to carry and count. This coin, known as the cash coin, was so successful that its basic design was used in China for over 2,000 years, all the way into the 20th century. Meanwhile, in India, another unique system of coinage was developing around the 6th century BC. These were some of the earliest coins in the world, appearing at roughly the same time as those in Lydia and China. But Indian coins were not stamped with the face of a king. Instead, they were flat pieces of silver that were punch-marked. Small, local kingdoms and wealthy merchants would use different steel punches to stamp various symbols onto the metal. A single coin could have 5 or more different marks on it. The symbols included things like the sun, elephants, bulls, and geometric shapes. These punch-marked coins, called karshapanas, were like a metal passport. Each mark was a sign of a person or group who had tested the coin and verified its weight and purity. It was a decentralized system of trust. Instead of relying on a single king, people trusted the collection of marks from many different sources. This system flourished for centuries across the Indian subcontinent. It shows that while the goal of money, to create a trusted medium of exchange, was universal, the path to achieving it was different in different cultures. Both the centralized Chinese system and the decentralized Indian system worked for their respective societies. History is, just packed with fascinating examples of things used as money that seem pretty strange to us today. Before coins became, common, many cultures relied on what we call commodity money, and honestly, some of it was really unusual. On the island of Yap, in the Pacific Ocean, people used these giant stone donuts called rye stones. These stones were actually carved from limestone, which interestingly isn't found on Yap itself, so they had to quarry them on other islands, and then transport them hundreds of miles across the open ocean in canoes. Some rye stones were just enormous, weighing more than a car. Their value came from their size, their craftsmanship, and the dangerous journey it took to get them home. But here's the strangest part. They were often too heavy to move, so everyone in the village just, knew who owned which stone. Ownership could be transferred verbally without the stone ever changing location. Even after coins were invented, they didn't always come in the neat, round shapes we're used to today. In Sweden in the 17th century, the country faced a silver shortage, but had a lot of copper. So, to make up for the lower value of copper, they created these enormous coins called plate money. These were massive rectangular slabs of copper, stamped with their value in the corners. The largest one, worth 10 silver dalers, weighed an astonishing 44 pounds, about 20 kilograms. Just imagine, trying to carry that around to buy groceries. It was a pretty extreme solution to a metal shortage, creating some of the heaviest money in history. On the other end of the size spectrum, there are some of the smallest coins ever made. In southern India, tiny gold coins called phanam were used. They were so small they looked like little grains of sand, measuring only a few millimeters across. It's honestly a mystery how people managed to keep track of them without losing them all the time. In ancient Greece, the city of Ionia produced tiny silver coins, some as small as 1/96th of a gram. These were probably used for very small, everyday transactions like buying a handful of olives or a small loaf of bread. This just shows that money needed to function at all levels of the economy, from massive plates to minuscule specks. Some money was even designed to be eaten. In many cultures, salt was a valuable commodity. It was pressed into bars called amole in Ethiopia, and these were used as currency for centuries. If you needed to make a smaller payment, you could just break off a piece. And if times were tough, you could even lick your money to get a vital nutrient. In Central America, the Aztecs and Mayans used cacao beans, the source of chocolate, as a form of currency. A small rabbit might cost 10 beans, while a slave could be bought for 100 beans. This money was, delicious, but it had a downside: you could literally eat through your savings. All these examples really show how creative humans have been in their long search for a perfect medium of exchange. For thousands of years, money was made of something valuable. It was gold, silver, or bronze. The value was in the metal itself. But, carrying around heavy bags of coins was inconvenient and honestly, pretty dangerous. Merchants traveling long distances were easy targets for robbers. So, in China, during the Tang dynasty around the 7th century, merchants came up with a clever solution. They would leave their heavy coins with a trusted agent. The agent would give them a piece of paper, a note that recorded how much coin they had deposited. This note was a promise. It could be exchanged back for the real coins later. These notes were called flying money because they were so much lighter than coins. At first, these were just private IOUs, but then, the government saw a big opportunity. Around the 11th century, during the Song dynasty, the government took over the system. They began to issue the world's first official paper money. These government-issued notes were called. This was a monumental leap in the history of money. For the first time, money was not an object of value, but a promise of value from a powerful authority. It was a piece of paper that was valuable only because the government said it was. The Venetian traveler Marco Polo was stunned when he visited China in the 13th century and saw people using paper as money. He wrote about it in his book, describing in amazement how the Great Khan could make money out of the bark of a tree. The idea of paper money eventually traveled from China to Europe. It took a while to catch on. Europeans were used to their gold and silver coins. They were, understandably, skeptical of paper. The first banknotes in Europe were issued by a Swedish bank called Stockholms Banco in 1661. The bank issued more notes than it had coin reserves to back them up, and the system quickly collapsed. This failure made people even more suspicious. However, the convenience was undeniable. Governments and newly forming banks slowly began to issue banknotes as a more regular practice, always promising that they could be redeemed for real money, gold or silver, on demand. This promise was known as the gold standard. A country's paper money was linked directly to a specific amount of gold held in its vaults. For example, the US government promised that you could take a $20 bill to a bank and exchange it for a double eagle gold coin. This system gave people the confidence to use paper money. They trusted the paper because they knew it was backed by something real and tangible. This system dominated world economies for much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, but it was only a matter of time before the final link to physical metal was broken. When the first European settlers arrived in North America, they entered a world with its own forms of currency. Native American tribes used wampum, intricate belts and strings made of polished shells, as a medium of exchange and for recording important events. The colonists, however, brought their own monetary confusion. They used a messy mix of English pounds, Spanish silver coins, Dutch guilders, and other European currencies. The most prized coin of all was a large silver coin minted in Spanish colonies in Mexico and South America. It was called the inch or piece of 8. It was so widely used that it became the unofficial currency of the American colonies. After the American Revolution, the new United States wanted its own money to signal its independence. The leaders debated what to call their currency. They decided against the British pound and instead chose the dollar, a name derived from the German Steuer, a type of silver coin. The name was familiar because the Spanish piece of 8 was often called a Spanish dollar. In 1792, the Coinage Act established the U.S. Mint and authorized the creation of American coins. The U.S. dollar was defined as being worth a specific amount of silver, directly competing with the popular Spanish dollar. The act also created dimes, quarters, and half dollars, establishing the decimal-based system we still use today. For much of its history, the U.S. was on a bimetallic standard, meaning both gold and silver were legal tender. The government would mint coins of both metals. This led to its own set of problems, as the market value of gold and silver would change over time. During the Civil War, the government needed to pay for the war but didn't have enough gold or silver. So, it issued paper money for the first time that was not backed by metal. These bills were called greenbacks because of their color. People were nervous about them, but they were necessary to fund the war effort. After the war, the U.S. returned to a metallic standard, eventually adopting the gold standard in 1900. The biggest change came in the 20th century. During the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a dramatic move. In 1933, he took the U.S. off the gold standard for its citizens. It became illegal for Americans to own most forms of gold. You could no longer walk into a bank and exchange your paper dollars for gold coins. The U.S. dollar was now fiat money. Its value came purely from the trust people had in the U.S. government. For international trade, the dollar was still linked to gold. But in 1971, President Richard Nixon severed this final link. From that point on, the US dollar and most of the world's currencies became fully fiat, backed by nothing but faith. For centuries, money was something you could physically hold, a coin or a paper bill. But in the middle of the 20th century, a new idea emerged that would begin to make money invisible. The story starts in 1949 with a man named Frank McNamara. He was having dinner at a restaurant in New York City and realized he had forgotten his wallet. To avoid the embarrassment, he had to call his wife to bring him cash. He thought there must be a better way. He came up with an idea for a cardboard card that could be used at multiple restaurants. He called it the Diners Club card. It wasn't a true credit card. The bill had to be paid in full at the end of the month, but it was the birth of the plastic payment. The idea of a charge card soon evolved. Banks began to see the potential. In 1958, Bank of America launched the first true general-purpose credit card, the Bank AmeriCard, which would later become Visa. They mailed thousands of active cards to households in Fresno, California, as an experiment. It was a chaotic start, but the concept of buy now, pay later was incredibly powerful. Other banks followed, creating a system of cards, merchants, and networks that allowed people to make purchases without cash. The magnetic stripe, added to cards in the 1960s, made transactions faster and more secure, paving the way for the global credit card economy we know today. The next great leap came with the rise of computers and the internet. As banks became computerized in the 1970s and 80s, money started to transform into pure information. It became numbers on a screen. The ATM, automated teller machine, allowed people to access their money without a human teller. Then came electronic funds transfer, or EFT, which allowed banks to send money to each other instantly. When you get a direct deposit from your employer, that's money moving as digital data. There are no bags of cash being moved. It's just a series of electronic messages that change the numbers in your account and your employer's account. The internet supercharged this trend. Online shopping, which started in the 1990s, meant you could spend money without ever leaving your house. Companies like PayPal created ways to send money to anyone with an email address. Then came smartphones, which put a bank in everyone's pocket. Apps like Venmo, Zelle, and Apple Pay have made payments instantaneous and social. Today, the vast majority of money in the world is not physical cash or coin. It exists only as digital entries in computer networks. We've moved from money as a thing to money as pure information, a far cry from the Lydian coins of ancient times. In 2008, in the midst of a global financial crisis, a paper was published online by a person or group using the name Satoshi Nakamoto. The paper was titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It proposed a radical new kind of money. It was purely digital, like the money in a bank account, but it had one crucial difference. It didn't need a bank or a government. Bitcoin was designed to be a decentralized currency. This means that no single person, company, or authority controls it. It is run by a network of computers all over the world working together to verify and record transactions. So, how does it work without a bank? Bitcoin uses a technology called the blockchain. The blockchain is like a giant public ledger or a global spreadsheet. Every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever happened is recorded on it. This ledger is not stored in one place. It is copied and shared across thousands of computers. When a new transaction happens, the computers on the network compete to verify it and add it to the chain. This process, called mining, is what secures the network and creates new Bitcoins. Because the ledger is public and distributed, it's virtually impossible for anyone to cheat the system or spend the same Bitcoin twice. Bitcoin introduced the world to the idea of cryptocurrency. A cryptocurrency is a digital currency secured by cryptography, which makes it incredibly difficult to counterfeit. Since Bitcoin's invention, thousands of other cryptocurrencies have been created, each with different features and goals. Some, like Ethereum, are designed to be more than just money. They are platforms for building decentralized applications, like financial services that don't need a bank. Others, called stablecoins, are designed to have their value pegged to a real-world currency, like the US dollar, to avoid the wild price swings that Bitcoin is known for. So, what does this mean for the future of money? We are at a fascinating crossroads. We have a system of government-backed fiat currencies that are increasingly digital. At the same time, we have a new parallel system of private, decentralized currencies being born. Will cryptocurrencies replace traditional money, or will they exist alongside it? Governments around the world are also exploring their own digital currencies, known as central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. A digital dollar or a digital euro could one day exist. The story of money, from barter to Bitcoin, has been a story of constant evolution. The next chapter is still being written, but it's clear that money is becoming more digital, more global, and more complex than ever before.